We're gonna get on to the next topic here. Dom, what do you want to talk about?
So yeah, we'll jump right into it. Nice transition. I want to talk about Uncharted 4. I'm about probably less than halfway through. I'm up through chapter 8 right now of 20 something. Um, and like I said before, like this game is an undisputed 10 out of 10. Naughty Dog is the pinnacle
Jeez.
of what developers should strive to be. Um, when you
You're
look at
insulting CD Projekt Red.
when you look at the parts on their own in a vacuum, you can make valid complaints. But when how this game comes together as a whole product is unlike anything else that exists. The most impressive thing about it is those cinematic elements we kind of hinted at earlier, but also the integration or the seamlessness between those cinematic cutscenes and the gameplay. Even when you're in a fist fight, for example, the killing moves or the knockout punches or whatever all flow so well between the actual gameplay and the cinematic, the end move or whatever, where Nate throws a guy into the wall and that kind of stuff. The shooting mechanics are good. There's probably better games that do it better, but the shooting mechanics are well above average, serviceable, of course.
I don't
The
know.
climbing is fun. And this game, I think, does it better than the previous three, where it kind of ushers you along a certain path without putting a glowing ledge in front of you necessarily, right? It's not like it feels like you're watching a movie where you could go another way, but for some reason you just have this sense to go in one direction, to jump towards that ledge. And it's always the right way. I've had very few moments where you think you're supposed to jump one way and you end up falling, and that's not where the game intended. There are a few immersion breaking moments like that, but very rare. They do a very good job of making that come together in this one. And then on top of all that, this is very much the last Uncharted game, and they like to let you know that. There are lots of Easter eggs and throwbacks to the other games, and you just get that sense of finality when you're playing this game. And the one other thing I wanted to point out, and me and Jordan talked about this earlier, I won't spoil it, but there is probably the best Easter egg ever in a video game, in my opinion. A couple of chapters into this game, so
Wait, we can spoil it. It's not like if it's a couple of chapters.
no. I don't want to do that. The storytelling, the cinematic, like everything just comes together so perfectly, and I can't wait to finish the game and see what this ending is that everyone seems to love. So, Jordan, what do you think? Let's hear your complaints.
You know, my thoughts, my love for the game is much less than yours. There's parts that I love about it, and then there's a lot of parts that just I'm not so happy about. Of course, the game's beautiful. The graphical fidelity is very high,
How did I not mention
and
that?
yeah, the score is great. The music is awesome. All the voice acting and the characters are done really well. But those have never been things that Naughty Dog has struggled with. They've always excelled at all those things. So I wasn't expecting any less coming off of Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us. However, I was expecting some more improvements in the gameplay and some more innovation. I wanted them to push the genre forward, to push the Uncharted franchise forward, and also to push the PlayStation 4 forward, which they did in some aspects where, they probably are pushing it graphically just about as far as it can be taken. Though I would still argue that Infamous Second Son looks just as good, if not better, than this game. Hey, don't give me those eyes, Dom. You want to see a real life Seattle in a video game, even though that doesn't make any sense? You play some Infamous. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous game. Um, but anywho, besides the graphical aspects, like I said, there's just not enough innovation there, gameplay wise and mechanically. Um, I mean, it's in a lot of ways it's a better looking Uncharted 3. They've added rope swinging and they've added rock sliding, which are both like seriously minor additions, and they don't change the game in any positive or negative way. They're just kind of there. And other than that, there's really nothing. Like the shooting's the best it's ever been. I'll say that much for this one in the series.
It's come a long way.
But even then, I think like Quantum Break blows this shit out of the water. And I'm not even talking about the powers, the time powers. You can pull those out, and Quantum Break is leaps and bounds over Uncharted 4 any day of the week. So there's still the same pacing issues that the series has, that I've grown accustomed to with the Uncharted series, because it's really just run, shoot, climb, do a little puzzle, and then you start it all over again and do the exact same thing, and there's not enough variety in the gameplay, or just in the experience in general. So in my mind, I look at Uncharted 1 through 4, and I look at The Last of Us, and I just think that what Naughty Dog is doing these days is making very beautiful and pristine games that sound and look amazing, and they take your breath away in that sense. And that's great. But when it comes to the games, they're just average to me. They're nothing better than average, because like I said, Remedy, studios like Remedy are blowing them away with the third-person shooting gameplay, or even Ubisoft with The Division is way better. And then when it comes to mechanical variety and just a diverse and immersive experience, I think, like I said earlier, CD Projekt Red or Rocksteady with the Arkham games, there's just so much more to do in those games, and they're so fun. And it's not even just because they're open world, there's just more variety, and the pacing is a lot better, because you're not just so used to that same loop and cycle of running, shooting, climbing, and puzzling. So I guess my simplest thoughts on this game are a little bit disappointing, because other than the fact it looks better, I really don't see very many improvements coming from Naughty Dog from either Uncharted 3 or The Last of Us.
I want to get in here before Dom rebuttals. So for me, I've never played an Uncharted game, but I just want to talk about Naughty Dog real quick for a second. So when Last of Us came out, I immediately bought a PS3 to play Last of Us. I have never felt the need to buy a console to play Uncharted. Nothing to say against the game franchise. You can love it or hate it. The thing that I feel, and I've seen plenty of Uncharted gameplay, and to me, it feels like with Last of Us, you can say maybe the gameplay isn't great or anything, but like it seems like a good molding of getting a game and getting a story and putting those two together and making them work, right?
Yeah.
With Uncharted, it seems like, and it's the same problem I had with Tomb Raider, and maybe it's just a product of those type of games, but like and some games do this. It seems like you have a story and you try to say, how can we make this a game? And that's what it feels like with the Uncharted games. Personally, it's like, we have this fantastic story. Now, how do we make it a video game?
Sure. See, I see what you're saying, but I think it does it fantastically. I mean, Uncharted and The Last of Us do it better than any other game. They blend a story and a game.
Man, the problem I have is like Uncharted just seems like a really nice movie. Like when I see games that have really beautiful cutscenes and they tell a really awesome story, for instance, I'll even have comparison to their own other game, Last of Us. When I think about Last of Us and I think of all of the cinematic stuff and like watching the parts of the game, I'm like, oh yeah, I love those parts, plus I love playing the game. It seems like if I were to play Uncharted, I could just watch the cutscenes and I would never think twice about the gameplay I had. And maybe that's me coming from somebody who's never played the franchise, so I could be completely out of base on this, right? But I don't know.
I totally agree. I will say I don't love any of the gameplay in Naughty Dog's games since Jack X Combat Racing, shout out, on the PS2, but I would say I do like The Last of Us gameplay better than Uncharted.
Plus, we're saying is a 10 a 10 or is it an 8? Like, it's still a great game. Like, we're basically picking stones at this point. Like, obviously, it's a good game.
I'd say for my rating, if I had to put one on it, would probably be like a 7.5-ish to 7.8. Like, for you to get an 8, for you to get an 8 from me, you have to do something special, Dom. At any point in your gameplay experience with Uncharted, I could walk into the room and say, hey Dom, what are you going to be doing next? And if you were climbing, then you would probably say shooting. And if you were shooting, then you'd probably say climbing. And, 75% of the time, you'd be correct, because there's just nothing else happening. There's like one level where you do a scuba dive and you hook up a fallen ship to your boat. And there's one where you're climbing around as Kid Drake, but you're still just climbing. That's what I'm saying, is there's just not enough diversity in the gameplay.
But they still got you to buy the 4th installment of it and want to play it.
Sure, I want to be part of the conversation, and, we're definitely not getting enough awesome first-party exclusives from Sony on the PS4. And, I know I talk shit about Naughty Dog, but Jak and Daxter is the reason I love PlayStation so much. I originally beat Jak and Daxter on a neighbor's PlayStation 2, and I was like, holy shit, this is so good, I have to get it and get its sequels for, I have to get a PS2 so I can play all this stuff. And then I got into Ratchet and Clank and Sly Cooper, and so that's how I got into Naughty Dog and Insomniac and Sucker Punch. But yeah, Naughty Dog was my first PlayStation experience, or PlayStation 2 experience, I should say. And I've loved those guys ever since then. So really, these last 10 years, since Uncharted 1, I've been I don't want to get all emotional. I'm not super upset. But yeah, it has kind of I've felt sad about it because they're not... I get it. I get that Nathan has to, murder 1,500 guys before he gets to the top of the mountain where the treasure is. But it's the point you just made, Jerrad, about them making a story first and gameplay second. That rings so true to me. I couldn't agree more with that, because they even have a trophy in Uncharted 4 if you kill 1,000 people. It's something about narrative dissonance. I can't remember what the exact trophy is called, but it's basically just talking about how Nathan's supposed to be this happy-go-lucky guy, and this guy that you're supposed to get along with and want to be around. And there's no way Elena would marry that guy. Elena's an actual good person, and he's a raving murderer. And just the narrative dissonance there doesn't make any sense. So I totally agree with the fact that I feel like they come up with their stories before the gameplay.
I want to hear what you have to say, Dom. You've been mighty quiet this whole time.
Give me a rebuttal, Dom. I just called it a 7.8.
To start, I guess this is the best looking video game ever, on any platform. I mean, I guess we could say you could make an argument that there's been better looking video games for their time, right?
I can't wait to see it on Neo.
Right, exactly. But this, I mean, that's the first thing that I somehow forgot to mention earlier. Yeah, this is the best looking video game ever created, ever. I think it's undisputed. I don't think you can make an argument otherwise.
I do make the argument that Infamous Second Son comes very close, if not surpassing it, because holy shit, that game's it makes my eyes poop rainbows, dude.
I will agree with you guys that The Last of Us, I think The Last of Us is overall a better game. That's one of my favorite games of all time. The Uncharted games are just, right behind that. Last of Us just, if you think about it, you really are doing less than even in an Uncharted game. There's no puzzles. There's no climbing.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like anything's forced, though, is what I'm saying. There is less, but that might be a better thing. They're not trying to force all these gameplay things on you.
I would even say that there's more mechanical variety, because it's really cool how you have the whole crafting system and how you don't pause the game when you craft, so you have to find a corner, and then just the scrounging system, trying to find these little bits and pieces to put together a new weapon because your old weapon's breaking down. That's the type of stuff that I want if Naughty Dog's not going to be making a fun, jumpy game. It needs to have things that are smart and, intellectual that they put in there to be okay, this makes sense for the world. Of course, Nathan Drake shooting 1,000 guys makes sense for the world, because these big corporations that he's going up against want the treasure that he's getting. And so I just like it better in Last of Us when everything matters so much more for the gameplay.
And the thing, too, is so if this is the final game, I understand that everyone's saying it's a final game, that the ending alludes to this and yada, yada, yada. Money speaks for itself. People thought Gears of War was done. Guess what? We're getting another Gears with the sun.
Yeah.
If this is the final game for Uncharted, I do have to respect Naughty Dog for knowing when to say we're done. Being able to end a story is something that's really hard in video games, because it's, hey, sequel, hey, sequel, hey, sequel. It's very hard to have a very closed off story where there's a clear beginning and a clear end. And
I agree. I want to jump off that too. Neil Druckmann and the other guy, Bruce Straley.
Bruce Springsteen.
The amount of care and like concern they poured into this game, and I can't even imagine the hours. Like, you can just feel it from them, you know, how much they put into this game. It radiates off of it. The level of polish that comes with this, with all the Naughty Dog games, is astounding to me.
For me, I don't think I've ever played a 10 out of 10 game. I've never played a game that was perfect, honestly. If I have a conversation about a video
10 out of 10
game,
doesn't mean perfect, at least not to me.
To me, it means perfect because it's 10 out of 10. Like, to me, if I'm talking about a game and I say everything is awesome, but the moment I say but means it's not a perfect experience. Therefore, in my heart, it's not a 10 out of 10. And that's the way I look at it personally. Plus, I think scores are bullshit. I think the way I look at games is like, should you play this? Should you rent this? Should you buy this? You know, like, I really, to me, review scores don't mean jack shit, but that's just my opinion. So I think people be getting mad about somebody giving an 8.8. Who cares? Everyone has an opinion. Like, why? I don't know. I understand why people got so mad.
And this is a great example of why review scores just don't work, because I just said, you know, a 10 out of 10 to me doesn't mean it's perfect. Obviously, to you, it's different. So, that's why review scores cause a lot of dissonance there.
Yeah. Super subjective.
Right. Let me end by saying that the best thing about Uncharted 4 is that this means that Naughty Dog is now working on The Last of Us 2.
Sure. The best thing about Uncharted 4 is that they're working on something that's not Uncharted.
Maybe that was a bit of a hyperbole, but point being, I'm really excited.
I have a question for you guys real quick. A, do you think that Naughty Dog will make something other than Last? Do you think they'll have a new IP in the next, 5 to 10 years? And B, do you think that this will be, when it's all said and done, and this console generation's done, that's if we move on to the next console, whatever happens, do you think that Uncharted 4 will be the quote-unquote game of PS4? Like, do you think that'll be the game that people think is the best game on PS4? You don't think so?
It will be The Last of Us 2, which will come out in 2 or 3 years. And then their new IP will probably hit the next console generation, I'd imagine. But I do think they will do something new. But their next game, I imagine, will be Last of Us.
I mean, for me, I could already think of a top 10 on my PS4 that doesn't even include Uncharted. And
that's insane.
Obviously, I'm not super high on the game, but yeah, like Bloodborne, Ratchet and Clank, Infamous Second Son, Witcher 3, Batman Arkham Knight. Like, I could go on and on, so...
But that goes back to our argument about reviews and just things in general. Like, video games are so subjective. They're like music and stuff. Like, you know, just because something is quote-unquote a masterpiece, it doesn't mean it resonates with people. You know, like...
Yeah.
So...
I will say, my closing thought on this subject, I am loving the story. I'm loving the characters and the way it's written, which I always do in Naughty Dog games. That's never the problem. But I will say, when I'm running around playing this game, I'm getting very excited for Tomb Raider on PS4 this fall.
Awesome. I think we've talked enough about Uncharted 4. Dom's just shaking his head.
Thanks again, everyone, for watching and or listening. If you like what you heard, be sure to give those like and subscribe buttons a quick click. Every little contribution can help to make our channel grow. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interest. See you later.